Hey Bookish Babes, and welcome to the 12 Days of Vlogmas, Day 2. For those that are new around here, the name's Rainy. I teach elementary music, musical theater for middle school, and I also read all types of books. Thriller, horror are my main ones, but I also read romance, fantasy, sci-fi, nonfiction, all of the things. So please like and subscribe to this channel so that you can help it grow. That would be greatly appreciated. In today's video, we are on the second day of the 12 Days of Vlogmas, and we are going to be hitting it off with an end of the year reading survey. Basically my reading wrap up for like this year. Yes, I know December is not technically over yet, and maybe I'll find like another great book or so that I want to talk about that I'll just talk about in later vlogs. But we're going to go with it right now because at the time you're seeing this, it's December 14th. We're halfway through the month, and it is what it is. But I got these questions, I believe, from 2 different YouTube channels, and I can't remember exactly who. I will go back and find who I got these from and tag those videos down below. But it's basically just a bunch of questions you answer to like survey your reading for the month or for the year. And so far I've read 107 books. So I have a lot of books that I could be pulling from for this end of year survey. I have my questions right here on my phone so I don't forget anything. So with that, we are just going to get started, and I am going to answer these questions to the best of my ability. And yes, I own most of these books, but I don't feel like digging around to find where they are because books that I have read are in my bedroom. So I'll probably just pop up pictures of books that are not currently in this vicinity with me. All right, let's get started. Okay, so the first question is, how many books did you read? And like I just said, I've read 107, which blows my mind because last year I read 32. I basically almost quadrupled it. All right, your most read genre, that for me is thriller. I have read 44 thriller books. Like I said, I really love thriller. And then a lot of the other ones have been like horror or contemporary or like YA, a couple fantasy. But I've read 44 thriller. As for the longest and shortest books that I've read, shortest book that I read was And Every Morning the Way Home Gets Longer and Longer by Frederick Bachman, which is this little novella that clocks in at, how many pages? Oh my goodness. 76 pages. And it is about this boy who basically is having to watch his grandfather suffer from Alzheimer's, and his grandpa's trying to like tell him stories, and he's getting upset that he has Alzheimer's, and it's just them spending like their last peaceful moments together before he forgets everything. And honestly, it was really sad and depressing because my grandpa has Alzheimer's. However, he's doing really well because he's on like a lot of medical trials and stuff, but this was very sad. But I very much loved it. And the longest book that I've read this year was Crescent City, House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas, and that clocks in at 799 pages. So you know, and I also, this is the first book that I fully annotated. I was just looking at it and admiring it. All of my notes, my highlightings, all the things. This just makes my heart happy. But yes, there is a significant gap between these 2 books. The next question is, what is your favorite book that was published in 2022? And I would have to say that my answer to that, I have 2. Actually, no, I have one. I have to say the one that I enjoyed better. Although, I'll probably say my contender because I loved both of these. But my favorite book that was published in 2022 is actually Blood Sugar by Sasha Rothschild. I loved that book. I loved it. It's like about a girl named Ruby, and basically she doesn't murder people, but like if someone is, well, actually she does murder people. Basically she helps crime or peace move along. So if someone is like a shitty person and there's a way that they could die in the moment and she can help with that, then she doesn't get out of the way, if you know what I'm saying. And basically then her husband is dying and they think that she has caused that murder, and she's like, well, I didn't cause that murder, but in my head I've caused 3 others. And so she has to get out of that. I loved it, had so much fun with it. It was so good. I would also say that the other book, though, that I absolutely loved that was published in 2022 was Children on the Hill by Jennifer McMahon. It's like a Frankenstein modern retelling. Oh, I loved it so much. I just loved everything about that book. Like the time changes, like the flashbacks, all of the stuff. If you're looking for good books from 2022, I would recommend Blood Sugar and Children on the Hill for sure. As far as my favorite debut book in 2022, that would have to be Just Like Mother by Anne Heltzel. And that is the one with the creepy baby doll head on the cover. And I had a great time with this. I believe I put it out of 4-star. And this one just had a lot to do with like this mommy cult, like pregnancy mommy cult. and it was very weird and trippy. This author has written from YA before, but this was her first adult debut, and I had a really fun time with this book. I thought it was great. It's nothing to write home about. Honestly, I've forgotten a lot of already happened in it, but I do know that I enjoyed it, and I had a great time with it, and the vibes were all there. So I definitely would recommend this as like a creepy thriller book if you're interested in that. The next question is, what's your favorite book that was not published in 2022? And I know everybody knows this by now, and you're getting sick of me saying this, and you know what, I'm going to say it until at least next year when I have to pick a new favorite book of the year. And that is Other People's Clothes by Calla Henkel. Well, I'm not going to explain this. I've explained it like 30 times. And I've had people say I've picked it up because of you, and I just love it. So read this book. It's my favorite. It was published in 2021, and I just love everything about it. I'm probably going to reread it next year, and I don't reread books, so you know that means I loved this book. The next question is a book that lived up to the hype. And for me, that was Verity by Coho. So, I have only just recently started getting into Colleen Hoover. I've read It Ends With Us, and I loved it. I've read Reminders of Him, and I loved it. And I think that's all I've read so far. And then I read Verity, which is like her thriller. She only has 2 thrillers, that and Layla. And everyone was telling me, Verity is so good, Verity is so good, but it's crazy. Like, and I've heard the hype, I've seen it on Book Talk, I've seen all the things. And I finally was like, you know, I just need to know what little Verity is all about. And I just gotta say, Miss Colleen, I am concerned for you. Like, that was a very dark book. That was the first book that triggered me as a parent, because the things that this mother does to her own children wanted to bring me to tears. It was so sad and creepy and scary. And how messed up this book goes, like, whole nother level. But even though it triggered me, I still absolutely enjoyed it, and I loved it, and it was riveting all the way through to the end. So it lived up to the hype for me for sure. I really loved it. Like, it's on my top 10 books for the year. However, a book that did not live up to the hype was The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. I thought that was going to be a 5-star. It was a 5-star prediction for the year, and it ended up being a 2.5 star. Why? I loved Final Girl Support Group, and I gave that a 4 or a 4.5 star. I didn't like this. So his thing with horror is that it's not like complete horror, but it's more like creepy horror. Like, there was a disgusting cockroach scene or 2 in this. There was a disgusting rat scene. And I'm not for like that funny, dirty, icky, like comedic horror. That's not my jam. And it's a book about slaying vampires, yet you literally don't get to like slaying vampire shit until like 50 pages from the end. And it's like a 400-page book. And so the rest of it, I'm just like, we're dawdling on for like what? It seemed like there was no end, no purpose in sight. I didn't understand. So I'm very sad that I didn't appreciate that book as much as I could have. But, oh well. The book that felt like the biggest accomplishment to me this year would have to be the first book in the Greenbone Saga series, which is Jade City by Fonda Lee. Now, that book is only about 500 pages, and each book gets progressively more and more. Like, I think the last one, Jade Legacy, is like 800 pages, and I just haven't committed to reading that yet. The reason it felt like the biggest accomplishment to me is because I do not read fantasy. Like, I don't hate fantasy, I just don't read it. And so that was the first, like, high fantasy book that, like, I had to like work with. Like, the first 100 pages I was kind of lost. I was hearing all these character names. I was hearing all of these places. I was hearing all of these different like abilities and magic and world building and all this stuff. And I was getting lost, and I was having to draw maps and character things. And I just didn't know if I was going to be able to get through it. And then once I kept going through it, I really started to love and appreciate it. But if you've never read a high fantasy book, it's really confusing for like a good while, and you just kind of wonder if it's even all worth it. Trust me, this book is worth it. It's one of my favorite series of all time. I loved the second book, and I can't wait to finish it out with the third one, but it's definitely not for the faint of heart. So ease yourself into it with maybe some other fantasies before you just dive yourself into this bad boy. My favorite character from the year is definitely Miss Finley Donovan from Finley Donovan Knocks 'Em Dead. I just love good old Finley and her good old pal, who I am blanking on her babysitter sidekick's name, but they're basically like a Thelma and Louise duo. Finley just gets herself into the worst situations ever as a con woman. Even though she's not a con woman, she's literally a crime writer and has somehow gotten into this con woman business. Or not even con woman business, like this hit woman business. And it's just so good. She's just so fun. I have the best time reading from her perspective, and she's just a hoot and a half, especially because I relate to her because well, I'm not a single mom, but because she, you know, has her kids, and she's a hot mess express, and I feel like I'm a hot mess express, like hence how I look right now. So I really can appreciate Miss Finley. Least favorite character from this year is actually very recent, and that would be Connell from Normal People by Miss Sally Rooney. And I read Normal People in November, and I hated it. It was a 2-star. But the character Connell was my least favorite person, because the way that he treats Marianne throughout this whole book is absolute garbage, and I don't understand how this entire book focuses on their relationship when their relationship is not even a relationship, if you could even call it that, and it's just him basically sleeping with her when he needs to feel something, or he needs to, like, not be alone, but, like, she's in love with him clearly, and, like, it's just awful. I think he's a terrible person. I think they would never get together in real life, and if they did, he is a manipulator and an abuser, user, like, cheat. I just don't like him. So, I don't like him, and that's that. Next question is the most shocking book or most shocking moments, and I have a couple for these. So, I would say the last sentence of Other People's Clothes. Shocker. Like, I still can't get it out of my head. I would also say, most shocking book and moment, I would say The Push. The end of that, like the whole last chapter, and even in the middle. Oh, The Push is so good. If you haven't read that yet by Miss Ashley Audrain, get to it. It is such a good evil child, like, bad seed trope book. I would also say Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke. That entire book is just a weird, like, chat room situation between two lesbians gone wrong, and it gets weird, let me tell you. And then my other one would be Miss Judith's Sonnets for the Sake of, especially for the sake of number 2. Because that one, I still remember that end scene to this day, and it is haunting and morbid. Like, haunting. I still think about it and I cringe. So those are definitely the most shocking books and the most shocking moments that I've had throughout this year in my reading experience. The next question is my favorite couple, and that would have to be Miss Delilah and Claire from Delilah Green Doesn't Care. And that is the only romance that made it into my top 10 books of this year. I loved Delilah. I loved Claire. I loved this whole book. It was, I don't know, it was just camp to me. Like, this was like the perfect romance to me. I just had so much fun with it. It wasn't too steamy, but it also was like, I don't know, maybe I just like books that have mom characters because I'm a mom now and I can relate to that. I don't know, but I just thought they were so cute and so sweet, and it just really worked, like the grumpy sunshine girl with like the single mom. Like, I don't know, it just warmed my heart, and I had so much fun with it. I highly recommend, and I can't wait for the second book. I think Astrid Parker, or Astrid Something Doesn't Fall, it's the sequel. So excited to continue on in that world. Then we go to the best written book, and I have 2 for those, and that would be A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson and Know My Name by Chanel Miller. A Dowry of Blood has some of the most beautiful writing I've ever heard in my life. I wish I had the book in front of me so I could read to you some of these beautiful sentences that are in that book. But it is like a vampire book about Constanta, who is one of his harem, like, brides, and basically she tells you the story of how she killed Dracula because of how awful he is. And I loved that book, and it has beautiful writing. Like, I can't describe it enough to you. So if you have that book, or you've been thinking about picking up that book, pick up that book. It was beautifully written. And then Know My Name by Chanel Miller is the book, the nonfiction book about the sexual assaulter Brock Turner and, like, the victim, Chanel Miller, who is Jane Doe and who he physically assaulted, and it's her memoir. And it was just beautiful, reading from her perspective, hearing from her perspective, really, and her narrating it herself. My top favorite memoir of the year. In fact, probably the only memoir I read of the year, so really it didn't compete with anything. But I highly recommend it, for sure. The next question is the book you pushed the most people to read in 2022, and I'm sure you know, Other People's Clothes. I've probably pushed this on like 30 people at this point because I keep recommending it in like the 12 for 12 that's going all over Instagram. So if you keep seeing this on people's Instagrams, it's me. You're welcome. My favorite cover of the year would have to be this is one of them. I don't know. I only picked up this book because of the cover. I saw it, and honestly, that's why I bought it. And then also, Weight of Blood by Tiffany D. Jackson. I just think that's a beautiful cover. It's very simplistic, but, like, beautiful. It just has this beautiful, gorgeous black woman on it, and then also the blood and the crown from, like, Carrie. I'm just living and loving it. It's a whole vibe over here. Those covers are beautiful, and they're also beautiful books. And we have my favorite book to movie adaptation, and that would have to be Heartstopper, 100%, even though we only have season 1, and I'm hungrily waiting for season 2. That was the cutest adaptation I've ever seen. It stuck to the comic so well. It was beautifully done. Like, I've not heard a single person bash this, and you know you can bash adaptations all the time, but like, this was just so pure. I've watched it like 3 times. I love it every time I watch it. it just gives me all the warm fuzzy feelings inside. And if you have not made time to sit down and watch it yet, or read it, that's like a non-negotiable. The next question is, what book made you cry the most? And the answer is none, because I don't cry at books because I'm a terrible cold-hearted person. I'm joking. I'm not cold-hearted. I just don't cry at books. Like, that is just not a thing that I do. I cry at movies. I cannot seem to cry at books. And even when I'm pregnant, I can't cry at books. So, like, I feel like I'm just not destined to cry at books. The next one is, what book made you laugh the most? And that would be Sharks in the Time of Saviors by Kawhi Strong Washburn. That book is just a hoot and a half. Like, there are things that were written into it that they're talking about farts. They're talking, like, about sex, like, in funny ways. Like, the way that he wrote the banter between the family is just so hilarious. Like, I had to stop and be like, is this actually happening? Like, we're having a conversation about farting right now. We're having a conversation about banging one another in, like, this weird way. And, like, the husband, like, slapping the mom's ass in front of the kids. Like, it was hilarious. I just had the best time with that book. And it's a really good family dynamic book. And I love that it had that humorous side to it. I had so much fun with this book. Next question is new favorite authors that you discovered this year. And I have quite a few on that list. I would have to say Fonda Lee, who wrote the Greenbone Saga series, like Jade City, Jade War, Jade Legacy. Miss Emily Henry, because I read People We Meet on Vacation this year, and Book Lovers, and absolutely loved both of those. Ashley Winstead, because I read 3 from her this year, and they were all 5 stars. I read her 2 thrillers, In My Dreams I Hold a Knife, and The Last Housewife, and then I read her one romance, Fool Me Once. 5 stars, all 3 of them. So she's an all-time favorite author. Jennifer McMahon, I only read The Children on the Hill from her, but that was enough to make me love her. Geneva Rose, I believe the book I read from her is called One of Us is Dead, and I had such a fun time with that. That was like peak mommy socialite drama. Had a blast with it. Lucinda Berry, because I read The Perfect Child by her and absolutely loved it, and I have a couple other books of hers on my shelf that I want to get to super soon. And then I would also say Jennifer Hillier, because I've read Jar of Hearts this year from her, Creep, and I read Things We Do in the Dark. And Creep and Jar of Hearts got a 5-star. Things We Do in the Dark got a 4-star. She is shaping up to be an all-time favorite author for me as well. Really loving her work. It says, what is your guilty pleasure read of the year? And that would be the Mind F series by S.T. Abbey, books 1 and 2 out of 5. I haven't read 3, 4, and 5 yet. But like, this is literally like cringe writing. It's not good writing. It's just a fun time about a girl serial killer that basically like is righting the wrongs of all the men that have done her wrong and by killing them. And also having a secret affair. Well, it's not secret. Also, not even having an affair. Also in a relationship with the cop that is trying to bring her down but doesn't know that he's trying to bring her down. And yeah, it's not good writing, but you know what? It's a fun ride anyway. Then it says, what are a favorite book that you reread? And like I said, I don't reread books, especially thrillers, because I already know how it's going to end. And that's that. And finally, we're almost there. What is the best nonfiction book you read? Like I said already, it's Know My Name by Chanel Miller, because it is the only nonfiction book that I read. I started reading Jeanette McCurdy's book, I'm Glad My Mom Died, but I didn't get to finishing it because there are a lot of books that I'm in the middle of that I just haven't finished yet. But it would definitely be Know My Name by Chanel Miller. And the last question is, were you happy with your reading year? And I would say yes, because literally like 50% of my books, in fact, over 50% of my books, I think 55% of my books this year were 5 stars. I don't know. I know when I'm going to like a book and when I don't. There's only a couple of books that I've really like thought I was going to enjoy and I didn't. And I was really upset about that. I just have so much fun reading the books and picking the books that I'm going to read. I just know my reading taste really well. And yeah, I could probably be harsher in my ratings, but like if I really loved a book, why do I have to be harsher? Like, why can't I give books all the 5 stars? Like, I think I can. It's my reading experience. So I'm going to keep doing it. And that is all of the questions for the end of the year reading survey. I will try to put little tabs down here so you can know the answers to all these questions in case you're wondering, or write any books that were mentioned in here if you want to go check them out at a later date. There are so many good books that I didn't even get to in this end of year survey that you will hear about in my end of year wrap up with like all the books that I read this year, because that will be a book series at some point. All right, but with that, I'm going to let you go, and I will hopefully see you in tomorrow's day 3 of Vlogmas, which I will let you know what is coming. And day 3 is my reading goals, where I reflect on 2022 and how that went, and my new reading goals for 2023. All right, I'll see you guys in tomorrow's video. Bye.